So in this course, we will install Visual Studio Code, and we can do this very easy. I'm on my browser and I went to go to the visualstudio.com/download. And here I'm at the page for downloading Visual to the code. And the whole thing to do here is to select my distribution, Windows, Mac, or Linux. I'm on a Windows machine now. We will later in the lecture see how we can do this also on Linux. But for the moment you select here distribution. You either Windows or Mac. I will click Windows and I will download an installer. I will execute it once it is downloaded. So this is the installer. I will click accept. Basically just follow the steps. This step is very important. It is very convenient to check this add to passbooks. Also this add open with golden options will be very useful if we want Windows Explorer context menu. So I will add this. Click on next and install. Click on Finish and Launch and see if everything is okay. And yes, I can open visuals with your code. In this part, we will start to get familiar with VIA, and let's see first how we can open it. And the most straightforward way is to just double-click its icon. And this way we will open visuals to the code. This is what we get the first time we open it. Notice this purple bar here at the bottom. This means that we don't have any project, or easier said folder open inside the code. I can just use the command code and that's it. Let's now see and inspect the interface, and this is what we get. And notice the purple bar means that we have no open folder. This is the welcome screen. And here we can get some tips, some recent open the folders. Let's open a folder. And I will just close this welcome screen. And this is the initial interface. This is an Explorer view. And because I don't have any open folder, it will not show me anything. Let me just open a folder, and I can either do this from the menu right here and open a recent folder. Like, for example, these ideas test scores folder. And now that I have opened this folder, I can explore it right here on the left. This is the Explorer view. And this bar right here is called the activity bar, in which we have some shortcut buttons, 2 different views. Yeah, the most important one or the most used one is, of course, the Explorer view. And here on the bottom, we have the status bar. And as you can see, now that we have a folder open, it is a blue and it will show us different information regarding our project or our currently open file. For example, here I am on it shows me my current guide branch. I mean, if I will open a file, for example, this JSON, you will see that we will get some more information like for here, like, for example, the current position of our cursor. If I click this, I will be able to say, hey, go to a different line, like, for example, 23, and you will give me this line. This is especially useful for very big files. Yet again, this will show me the spacing for this file. I can play around with this. This will show me the encoding, and this is yet very important. It tells me the file type. For example, we are now using a JSON file. Usually this will go automatically. So currently it also detects what kind of file we have opened. I have, for example, here a JSON. I can open a markdown file and it will tell me, hey, you have a markdown. But if for some reason your file isn't recognized, you can just click this and select the type of files you want the code to help you with. You can see here there is an extensive list of files VSCode supports. And as you will proceed with your projects and with your code, you will install extensions and things will get more and more complex. The status bar will show you all the information we need, and you will see as the time will go by, it will get more and more crowded. Let's proceed in the next picture for the only shortcut you will ever need in this code. In this lecture, we will talk about the only key shortcut you will ever need for the code, and that is the command palette. You can also view it by going to View Command Palette. But if we press Ctrl Shift and B, we will open the command palette from which we can access any command inside Visual to Code. For example, if we want to make the font bigger, if we search, we will see that we can get the command to get the zoom in or zoom out. As you can see, I don't need to remember anything, or if I want to, for example, reset the window, I can do that. And also, as later on, we will work with extensions. Extensions will come with their own commands, which will go to this menu right here. It is very convenient. For example, if I'm not careful and I'm hiding my activity bar, hey, how can I make it back? I'm sure there's an entry right here somewhere, but no problem. I just can call the common palette and say activity, bar toggle, activity, bar visibility, and I'm done. And since we are talking about commands and gives notice, at least the commands from the menus, almost all of them have some key bindings, for example, Infilus Control and Open Fire Control All and so on, you can go to them. One way to edit or to view all the key bindings in this code is, again, Control Command Palette. And if I search for a keyboard, I can view it in a nice markdown way if I go to Preferences. Open Keyboard Shortcuts, and here I have an extensive list with all the commands inside my voice code. I can even add them, edit them if I want. I can go right here and if I want, I press another key combination and that is overridden. This is very convenient. If I want a way to view this, that this changes in, keys, I can also call the command palette. And if I go to keyboard, I can open this keyboard shortcuts as JSON, and this will only contain the files that I will have modified for my particular installation. As you can see, this will be saved locally on my computer. This being said, remember this combination Ctrl Shift and P command palette, and now we are ready to work with files. It's time for us to learn one of the most important features of the tax code, and that is working with files, and in this lecture we will see how we can either visualize files or folders and projects for this purpose. I have opened a project I have saved on my computer, which is on one folder, this Manager Server project. You can open any project you have locally, and if you do not have it, I can provide this for you as a lecturer, as a resource for this lecture. Let's get started. And I'm currently in the Explorer view right here on the left, and it should be the first thing you see on the top left corner. And this Explorer view, as you see at the moment, has like 4 entries. Let's see the first one. And this is just a file explorer. I can open a file. And there are 2 ways I can not just click on it and notice that it appears in italic font. This means that if I click another file, it will replace this currently open file. If I double click it, it will open it, and if I click another one, it won't replace it. This is the way you can open files in this code. Also, if we are looking at these files, let's see how we can visualize them. And as you can see, this is adjacent. It formatted as adjacent. This is a TypeScript file and it forms it as a TypeScript. If I want to look to files in the same time, I can either drag one and see this nice double view. I can even visualize more than one file, and I can even put it right here. And I can play all kinds of ways. I can play with visualizing files, as you can see. Visual cues to your code is very easy to customize and to visualize or either edit files. This is very convenient. Nothing special until now. The fun part comes when I want to search or explore a big project like this one, or even bigger, which contains lots of classes. And I want to open a particular class, let's say, for example, this user's handler, and let's say that my project is just opened. I can collapse all the folders and have this clean view. But if I want to open just one file and to search it very fast, I can press Ctrl B, remember, not Ctrl Shift and B, but Control B like this one. And this is a file search. First of all, this shows me the recently opened files. And if, for example, I want to open the user's database access, I can for once say users. The B axis, but this is hard and boring, or I can just press the grid, the first letters user's credentials. Deb axis, and it will directly find myself this file and I can open it and inspect it very convenient. Also, note that we have a file open. Let's go back to our Open Editors view. And as you can see, it appears here I can either close one closes from here or close it from here. But I see something else I want to show you is this outline of view, which, as you can see, shows me different icons for different fields or methods or constructor that this file has. This is more related to the code in this file, but nevertheless, it is very useful. You will know for sure, use it a lot of times. And one other view which is only available if you have such control configured for your project is the timeline view, which will show you for this current file that you have opened different positions. In time, of course, by different commit until the latest ones. This is a very powerful view and it will help you see the history of your file. As I said, only available if you have source control initialized for your project. We will see this later on in detail how you can do it inside this course. Another important feature of this code and any code editor is the search feature. And it is very simple and straightforward. It's, for example, I can search for this keyword and it will directly find all these keywords. I have some search parameters like here, for example, match, case or match the whole world. I can pick this up. I can either replace them and this will search and then replace this occurrences. Again, very simple and but yet very powerful. But another feature which is very powerful for the code, and this is a feature which was missing. Especially for JavaScript or TypeScript, is the reference search. And if, for example, I go to, let's say, our class, doesn't really matter which class, and I want to see who calls this method right here. This is especially useful for debugging purposes. We will come to this also later on where we will talk about code helpers. But let's say I want to see who calls these methods right here. One solution would be to just search it right here and see, hey, this one calls my method. But this is, of course, not so convenient for this. I can right-click it and find all references right here. And this will take me to the references view. It will open a new viewer right here and it will show me who calls these methods. And as you can see, currently, I have only 2 callers. Let's see if I am talking about references. There is another very useful feature, which is the call hierarchy. For example, I want to see who calls this create server method. I can click it and see call hierarchy. And as I can see, this is called by my launch app method from inside my launcher class. This is not so. Yeah, this is convenient. But another cool thing about this code, and I haven't seen this in other editors, is that I can also see who calls my method with this, but I can also see what my method calls. And as you can see, it will give me a list of methods or fields which this method calls. For example, it calls the create server, the listen method, the logs, the end. And yeah, these are just details, but it can show me exactly what this method calls and it can help me make a very powerful idea of what's going on inside my project really fast. If I want again to understand very fast what's happening here, I can, for example, go to a method. And if I want to go to learn more about it, I can press Ctrl and then click and it will directly open the file which contains it. And here again inspect its code. So as you saw, this code is very powerful when it comes to working with files, when it comes to navigating a project or visualizing a certain file. It helps us a lot in our programmer or designer life. And before finishing the lecture, there is one last very cool trick I want to show you. And I switched to my Windows machine to show you this, because on Linux, the shortcut is already taken by the operating system. But if, for example, I want to edit multiple lines in the same time. This code has a very cool feature called multiple cursor or multi-cursor. And how can I trigger this? Observe now that my cursor is here after this 880, but if I press Alt and then put my mouse at another places, notice that now I have like 4 casters and I can just edit all these lines in the same time. This is very convenient. When you want to modify, large files or you want to edit JSON files, just remember. Click and then Alt and then you can nicely edit all your lines in a very cool fashion. This being said, let's go in the next picture when you will see how we can customize our quality to the code. In this lecture, we will see how we can customize our installation of this code in the most straightforward way in which we will want to customize. The first thing, I guess, would be the font size. How can I make the font size bigger or smaller? For once, I can, of course, go to View, go to Experience and zoom in or zoom out. And as I can see here, the keyboard shortcuts are Ctrl plus or minus. I can press them and as you can see, I can make my font very small. I guess that for you is already hard to see. So I will make it bigger. This is the way I usually use it for my coding tutorials. Another way we can customize our code installation is by changing the theme. And we can see this if we go to our Manage button right here on the lower left corner. As you can see here, we have one entry for color theme or for file icons theme. Let's switch to the color theme. And as you can see, we have some themes. They are grouped as light themes or dark themes. Of course, you can select whatever you like, for example, light plus if you are that kind of programmer. Currently, I highly prefer dark themes, so I will go for the dark plus default dark. This is my favorite theme. Of course there are many extensions and we will talk about them, which can highly customize your appearance. And this is great about this code because those extensions are also very well done and a very powerful. One other way we can customize and we can see it. Here is the file icon theme, which again is very useful. Currently, we only have the city or minimal options, and let's to see how this is done. Let's see how we can install our first extension, and that is for the icons. And if I go to the extension, we will talk more about this in the next lectures, and I will just search for icons. One of the greatest is this VSCode icons. I will install it, just click install, and now I have the option to select it our Cricut. And as you can see already, my folders look much more nicer and this visual way helped me a lot to identify which folders contains what. This also will help us to prevent any typos inside our file names. This is wonderful, but the way to understand customization for this code is if we go and open the settings view, and if we go here, we can go to the settings view, and this is the way we can customize this code. And if you inspect these, there are so many options in which we can customize voice code. Basically anything here is customizable. This is great if you want to make your very own environment. But notice these two options, which are the most important options, the user and the workspace. And let's say, for example, that I want to customize the save on exit behavior. Of course, I can search it here. But more still, the most easy way is to just enter this name here and in the search bar and then search it. And as you can see, we have code actions on save. We have, for example, this option format on save. Yes, we can either trigger this or not. Let's say I don't want this. And now this won't happen, of course, when I save a file. But the most important thing is that I can edit this inside a settings.json file. So this view right here is just a markdown way of visualizing the settings.json file. And if I click this, it will go to my settings.json file, but notice the path right here, and this is my local user options. This means that these are the settings inside these settings. So JSON will apply to all my instances of this code no matter the project. I mean, so what I edit here, as you can see here, if I go here, I can have all kinds of assist or non-editing and adding, more and more customization. For example, here I can just select the zoom level, and I can either select this mouse. Well, zoom is just an example. Doesn't really matter. I will do this because we don't need it. What I wanted to show you is if we go to the other option here in the workspace settings, again, if I go here and I'm here, selected the workspace, and let's say at some point I will have this edit on JSON view, as you can see, it opened another setting, the JSON file, but this is much smaller. And as you can see, this is a new file inside my project. And here I can, for example, add these options right here and now. These options will only apply to my current project because they are saved locally in these settings. That JSON file, and they affect only this project right here. Again, very, very useful when you want different projects, maybe for backend, for front end, or from Java or from JavaScript, and you want different options with them. Very useful to just have your own set of options locally. And the greater ones are on the big settings, a JSON file. Very wonderful. And because we saw this user and workspace settings, let's discuss in the next lecture more and more about these workspaces and what they are inside the code. In this lecture, we will learn about workspaces, or how VSCode calls it in the documentation, multi-root workspaces, because currently we can tell that this is a workspace, but it contains only one folder. And these workspaces are basically collections of folders which we can manage in one VSCode window. To understand better what they are, let's open a new window in our VSCode, which doesn't have any open folders. Notice the purple lower line, and I can go to the File menu and select Add Folder to Workspace. And let's say that I want to connect my backend and front-end code for one project, for example. For this manager project I have. So I will select this folder. I will add. And it would appear right here, and notice Untitled Workspace right there. You can see it. Let's add another folder to our workspace. So we have the manager server. Let's also add to this manager UI. And now we have two folders inside our workspace, which is currently called Untitled Workspace. Let's give it a name, and we can give it a name by calling Save Workspace as. So I will go here and I will just save it in this folder with all my TypeScript file, and notice the extension. It's called Code Workspace, and let me just call it Manager Code Workspace. Save this file, save it, and see, now we have this Manager Workspace, and let us look at this file, how it looks, and I can open it with, for some reason it's hard for me to just visualize it with code. Yeah, I can see it right here. And as you can see, all this does is this is just a JSON file, which contains the path to our folders. Very basic until now. But what advantages do we have when working with multi-hued workspaces? One advantage would be that, yes, we see multiple folders right here, and they don't necessarily need to be in the same path. The one can, for example, be on one volume of my computer. One can be on the other volume. The point is here that I can link them together in one view, and this is very helpful for me when I develop common features between them. Another great advantage of multi-row workspaces is the search, so I can search for the same keyword in all the folders of my workspace. For example, I can search for manager. And as you can see, we have this model right here, and it directly finds it inside my manager server. So I have this path. Both that they are find in my search the same way works for search control. I can, treat this together or separately. They appear both right here in this view. And they said the same can be said for debugging. We will talk a lot more about debugging in the next sections. Also, one last great feature of workspaces is the settings configuration. So if I go to settings, I notice that we have the user settings, which we talked about. we have the workspace settings, which again, if I toggle, for example, I want 15 here. I want autosave delay. Like that, I close this, and if I search again the workspace for the workspace file, you can see that it saved these settings. You know, with the font size, with this, the delay doesn't really matter. And trying to make a point. And these settings will apply to both my folders right here or to all the folders inside my workspace. But you saw we have this, and new entry. In the case of the workspace, we have user workspace and now we can select a folder. And if I select one folder, for example, the manager UI and edit this, any, for example, insert. Spaces does really matter. Save it. Then again, the save will be the setting will be saved locally in the settings of JSON of my project. So we have all kinds of levels of settings. This is very flexible, very customizable, and you can do a lot with them, with grouping your folders and work in a very nice and organized way. In this lecture, we will talk more about extensions, and even if we already installed our first extension, they deserve much more attention since they are one of the key features of the VSCode. So the extension view is this one right here. And this will take us to a list of extensions. As you can see, the first time we see them, they are grouped inside of installed or recommended based on the types of files we already opened with our editor. And of course, that the first thing we see here is the search button. And let's see what are the most popular extensions on the code. And for this, I can use the search text and the type pat and VSCode installs and let us see which are the most installed, most popular extensions on it code. And as you can see, of course, we get to the Python extension. Currently it has 27 or so on million installs. This proves the power of this code and the way it's becoming more and more popular for other languages, like Python or Java. And as you can see here, for example, for me, it shows enable. That is because I already have installed it and I disabled it because currently I'm not writing Python anymore. But let's look at one extension, which I did and installed this year. Slint, as you can see here, we get an icon, its name. This is very important. Here we see the publisher and this is very important. If you want extensions from trusted source, usually Microsoft makes very much effort to publish a lot of extensions which are very good. Also here we see the number of installs. So when I choose an extension, I choose it based on the number of installs, the publisher and of course, the rating. But the ratings are not always so relevant. I saw very popular extensions, like, for example, the C and C++, which does not have such great ratings. But again, it is a great extension for C++ development. So these ratings are not always relevant. Lower down the path here, we see how we can use these extensions. And of course, all this comes from the GitHub page of this extension. Let's see how we can install an extension. And for this, I will try to install these guidelines extension. And yes, because it is a Getty will try to access my account and of course, I will not allow it. And, now that I have installed this extension, as you can see, some of them come with their own entry in our activity bar. So if now I select any file and of course I have some control configured for this project at any file, I will see at any line, I will see exactly who did it. Well, for example, if I click here, I can see that I did this line 6 months ago and I also get details about what exactly I did. This is just an example of a great extensions. Of course, I can also see what I have installed currently in my vehicle installation. And as you can see, I have lots of extensions, but most of them I have disabled because usually things. Of course, when you can install something, things can get very crowded. And this also means that the price for performance can suffer. This is why I choose. Do I choose to uninstall or disable the extensions that I do not use? For example, Now that an extension is installed, I can choose to disable. I can choose to disable it only for this workspace, which again, it is very convenient. Or of course, if I don't use it anymore, I can just uninstall it. This is, let's say, the workflow of using these code extensions. Of course there are like extensions for everything and your necessary extensions might be different. We will have a separate section only for most useful extensions, which were for me. You can Google them on YouTube and see what other extensions are popular. Of course, in this case, the sky is the limit and you can take your time and study them. But keep in mind the one thing, they will help you a lot for your specific task, whatever it might be. One final note about extensions is that we can see what is happening under the hood. And this is with the help of the terminal view right here. We will also talk in detail about this. If you don't see it, you can just go to terminal, new terminal, and we see this. What we care about currently is this output entry right here and here. You can see we get our getting logs from window main and so on. We do not care too much about it. The thing is that here at this point, you might also get logs of what happens with extensions because sometimes they might misbehave. You can see what's going on right here and fix in one place what you're doing or find a solution online. Google for the year or so, sometimes something might not work properly. 71. 00:05:170-00:56:160. Let's take, for example, this Jupyter extension, which let's say I want to uninstall and, I want to uninstall it. But it will tell me he cannot uninstall Jupyter extension. And I can also see a log from this in this. Let me find it in this. Yes, in the window log right here. And as you can see here, I am getting an error and it will tell me he cannot uninstall Jupyter extension because I have another extension, the Python, one that depends only on this. This is just one example of seeing what is going on under the hood for extensions or checking some internal logs of code. At times they might be very useful. This being said, we are done currently talking about the extension.